This is a film about the beginning of the Beatles. Now, it may surprise you to know we're not at the Cavern Club. We're not even in Liverpool. We're actually in the small market town of Neston, barely 10 miles away from Liverpool, in a much-loved community building, which in the 1960s was called the Institute. Simply an attractive public hall, you may think. But no, this building marks an important milestone in the Beatles story, because it is here that the Beatles got their name. In May 1960, a short column in a local newspaper announced that an up-and-coming Liverpool group, the Silver Beetles, would be performing on this stage at the annual community dance. Now, this was a last-minute change, because the group that normally performed here was called Kaz and the Casanovas, but they'd been made a better offer to go on tour with Billy Fury, an offer they couldn't refuse. In the press cutting, the name the Silver Beetles was spelt like that of the insect, with a double E. But when the posters appeared announcing the event, the group's name, the Silver Beetles, was now shown with an A replacing one of the E's. When the group performed here on June the 2nd, 1960, it was their first headline performance anywhere. And crucially, in the press review that appeared in the newspaper a week later, the word silver had completely disappeared from their name and was never to be seen again, because from now on, the group referred to themselves simply as the Beatles. Neston is a small market town on the Wirral Peninsula in the northwest of England, just a bus ride from Liverpool. Now, Neston is also the home of the oldest female-friendly society in the UK, and their spectacular walk on the first Thursday in June has taken place every year since 1814, interrupted only by war and the COVID pandemic. Following the walk and tea with the vicar, it was a tradition to hold an annual evening dance. And according to the Society's rules of 1911, only respectable persons should be admitted, and the cost should be 1 shilling. On June the 2nd, 1960, in this hall, the dance was led by the Beatles, but the price by now has shot up from 1 shilling to 3. As far as we know, there are no photographs of the Beatles on this stage, but had there been, it would be much like this photo taken in Hamburg 2 months later. Now, the lineup in Neston was George Harrison, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Stuart Sutcliffe and Tommy Moore on drums. In Hamburg, Pete Best replaced Tommy Moore. The group's original name, the Silver Beetles, spelt with a double E, was likely chosen in homage to Buddy Holly's backing group, the Crickets. Now, Buddy Holly, who'd been killed in a plane crash the year before, was well known to be a big influence on Merseybeat music. There are also no sound recordings of the Beatles on this stage, but they wouldn't have played what we think of today as Beatles music, but most likely the music of other Merseybeat groups of the 1960s and covers from the likes of Buddy Holly and Chuck Berry. The Beatles would have used these very stairs to get on stage on the evening of June the 2nd, 1960. But of course, back then, the group was almost completely unknown. So when they stepped onto the stage, they wouldn't have been greeted with hysterical screams from the audience, but most likely an air of indifference, with a few couples on the floor waiting for the music to start so they could dance, and the rest in the bar having a drink, unaware that tonight history was being made. Backstage, little has changed since the Beatles performed here in 1960. Just a few coats of paint perhaps. Now this corridor leads to the green room, a space common to all theatres where performers can relax before going on stage or during the interval break. The Beatles would have waited in this room before they went on stage. Their coats hanging on these hooks that had been fixed to the wall since the hall opened at the start of the century. I wonder what they were thinking. Were they nervously smoking on cigarettes? And I'm sure that their conversation would have been laced with Liverpool Scouse humour, a humour that never left them, even when they enjoyed immense worldwide success. The reporter from the local newspaper who recorded the Beatles' name in print for the first time would have interviewed them in this very room during the interval. Now, for reasons that have been lost in the passage of time, they gave themselves false, humorous names. Paul McCartney called himself Paul Ramon. Was he being funny? Was he trying to avoid his college finding out that he wasn't at home doing his homework? It is said that John Lennon kept a copy of this newspaper cutting and would show it around years later, boasting that it was their first review ever. And he was right. This venue has barely changed since the group performed here on June the 2nd, 1960. They had been booked to perform as the Silver Beetles, but by the end of that evening, they left this hall bearing music's most famous name, the Beatles. So we can safely say that this building is a monument to one of the most notable milestones in the history of modern entertainment, because it is here that the Beatles got their name.